my little crosscut looks like really good on this cigar.
Excellent.
Yeah.
My guillotine looks pretty nice on this cigar too, and I like the flavor of the wrapper.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. This is Nate, and we got Mike here, and we're gonna light us up a La Gloria Cubana Serie R.
Sounds like you're having some issues, dude.
Yeah, it sounds like I am, because guess what? I am, but I'm full up on the fluid. This thing's supposed to be windproof. And I just smoked a cigar earlier today.
Do you really? What'd you smoke?
Well, not this one. There, let me get the I saved the wrapper. It was a Gurkha though. And it was a aged 18 years Gurkha Cellar Reserve. It's a blend strength 98. Restricted release. Authentic mark of honor. I don't know what it was. It was a short little one. And actually, you know what? I was going to ask you, because I remember we talked on episode 1 about kind of like admitting mistakes and things. So I was going to ask you, this one was tapered at both ends, okay? And one end was like more open, and one end had kind of like a twisty little butthole thing going, or like a pigtail thing going. Mm-hmm. Which end am I supposed to light?
I'm pretty sure that if the torpedo is kind of bulleted off, the flatter end that had the butthole is what you're supposed to cut off. And then the other side, assuming that it was flat, you're supposed to light that end.
Well, I smoked that one backwards then.
Yeah, you're supposed to cut off the fat end of the teardrop and light the
but it was tapered so much on both sides. Like,
interesting.
It was tapered and one end. Well, that's what I thought. Like the both ends kind of look the same. It's not like there's a filter on these things. It's not like they, orient the tobacco leaves a certain way within them.
They probably do.
They might.
We're gonna get callers.
Yeah. You can call Mike's personal cell phone.
555-555-5555.
555 nice ashes. All right, well, I got mine going, so.
Perfect. I had no issues.
Well, you are also inside.
I am inside.
So, initial thoughts.
As you mentioned before, I like the taste of the wrapper. Very good. Starts off spicy and a little acidic. But
yes, I like it so far.
I'm about, 10 puffs in, and it's already good. It's already on the plus side of life.
Yeah, and I was going to say, like, this one, I think where I bought it, it was maybe $14-15.
Oh, okay.
So a little higher than I normally spend.
I know it had a cigar aficionado rating at 92 or something like that. It was it's a very good cigar. I like them.
Now, who are those guys and what do they do?
Cigar aficionado?
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, dude. All right, what are we talking about tonight?
Okay, well, do you want to start off with our main topic, or do you want to talk about some black-on-black violence that was televised on national TV?
Yeah, let's start with that. I guess that's what everybody's talking about. By the time this episode comes out, it'll be a little bit older news, but...
That's okay. That's okay. People will probably still remember, maybe.
Yeah, so my wife and I watched it live. And we, I guess like the initial live thing was Chris Rock made a joke at the expense of Will Smith's wife, who, well, we'll get into more of that stuff later. But anyway, Will appeared to enjoy the joke, laughed at it until Jada leaned over and explained some stuff to him. He then got up and very I don't know, almost strolled up on stage. So I was thinking like, oh, he's going to get up there and like rib him back. I mean, maybe these guys are buddies. I don't know. I don't really follow the private lives of celebrities. So I had no idea. And then it was just, the slap. And then he like sat back down, and then our broadcast kind of was like cutting out because I think, it's on a delay, of course. So they weren't sure how much to show the American people because we're sensitive. But I've since now today, I've seen unedited what Will was shouting at Chris and stuff like that. And I think just my initial thoughts are, I think that Chris Rock handled himself very nicely, very well, very professional. I mean, he's a comedian. He gets paid to make fun of people. Sorry that Will Smith's wife has a disease and didn't like getting made fun of about that. I mean, I'm type 1 diabetic since I was 4, and I've certainly been made fun of all the time, even with friends or, people that know I'm diabetic. They're like, oh, are you sure you can eat this, dude, or whatever? It's like, dude, I'm an adult. Like, leave me alone.
I never made fun of any diabetic people. I guess when I was a child, I know kids can be cruel.
You make fun of me all the time, but not because I'm diabetic.
Yeah, not because you're diabetic. Other things that are, ridiculous. But I've had a conversation.
Smoking a cigar backwards.
Oh my! No, I remember in high school there was this kid, and he was kind of dumb, and he had a crush on this young girl. Being a high school girl, we were all in high school at the time. And he's like, oh, I don't know if I want to date her. She's got diabetes. And she was a type 1 diabetic. And I looked at him I said to him, like, what does that matter at all?
Yeah.
So even in high school, it's like, we're in high school. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, you're just going to go out and have some fun. What's the difference?
And even if you don't, and she's the one, it still doesn't matter,
No. But that's, talking about a dumb kid named Schilling, right?
Yeah.
So I have not
and
seen
you saw it this morning, or you looked into it this morning.
I looked into it this morning, yes, and it's very interesting. I thought of a quote when I saw it, and it's a kind of a negative quote.
Yeah.
But it's the modern woman wants the rights of a man, the privileges of a woman, and the responsibilities of a child.
Sounds about right.
And in that case,
for this instance, yes.
For this instance, that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, she could have gotten up and slapped him. Will Smith wasn't even really he wasn't even involved in the joke, other than the joke was made at the expense of his wife, who's made a joke of their marriage.
She didn't want to take it on the chin, and you're a celebrity and a rich person.
Yeah, and even if you're not, you get made fun of all the time. Anyone does. When my wife and I were talking, I'm like, hey, you want to get made fun of? Go to work, go to school, go anywhere there's people and try to talk to them. Chances are you'll be made fun of. And the better thing that Will could have done is instead of, so here's kind of like the fine line, right? What Will Smith did is legally assault. The venue should have kicked him out immediately for that. I mean, if I walked across a restaurant and slapped somebody, you can bet they'd have the police there to escort me out of the establishment.
Absolutely.
So they should have done that. Legally, it's assault. But I was talking with my wife, and it's just like it's a slap. Chris Rock decided he's not pressing charges, and I feel like that's the bigger person thing to do, because it's a slap. Okay, he slapped me. Let's move on with life. It's not didn't seem like it was a devastating blow to Chris Rock's ego like it was to Jada's. But
no, and Chris Rock, I've been watching Chris Rock since I was in high school, 20 years, and he's through his comedy specials and his public persona, he seems to be a pretty enlightened guy. I'm guessing that it didn't bother him a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, he
personally,
was.
it didn't bother him a whole lot that Will Smith was being weak and childish.
Yeah, and if anything, like it helps Chris Rock's ratings. I mean, I'm sure he wasn't trying to bait getting himself slapped, but I mean, I like making jokes, but the goal of my joke is never to have someone slap me.
No, no. And a lot of that sort of comedy in those gigs is a roasting. So,
yeah, that's what you expect a comedian to do. You go to a comedy show, you're the only one wearing a Hawaiian shirt. Guess what? He's going to make some Hawaiian shirt jokes.
Potentially, yes.
I mean, if that's the type of humor. But you should know what you're getting into with Chris Rock.
Yeah,
so.
That's like going to go see Don Rickles and thinking that he's going to be your best friend or something.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess that's kind of that. I don't really have any more thoughts on it other than, Will Smith's acceptance speech after, and then he won, Best Actor, and he was talking about peace and love and everything. And I was kind of like, it's not the same level, but it's almost like if Putin came out now and said, you know what, guys, war crimes are bad and war is bad and we should love everybody. It's one of those actions speak a little louder than words type of thing.
Well, it's exactly like the United States saying that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, so I mean, that's that. I think the better way to handle it would have to have not slapped anybody. And then in your acceptance speech, just kind of said like, hey man, I don't appreciate that joke. It's not really fun or funny to make light of people's medical conditions. And then leave it at that. I mean, then you don't have to like politicize in your acceptance speech. You can talk about something relevant.
Sure. And you don't look like a, total jerk face, which is my opinion.
It's always a plus to not look like a total jerk face.
It is usually, but not everybody agrees with me. So not everybody agrees.
Well, we got one controversial topic out of the way.
Yes. Let's start the real controversial.
Yes. One. And I'm kind of like struggling here on my end. It's a little colder now. Got a little more wind.
Oh, do you? That's unfortunate.
So I'm just trying to get this goodly lit, as they say.
Goodly lit. Okay. So I don't watch sports. As you know, I watch bowling.
You don't watch the sports ball?
I do not watch the sports ball. But the only one I watch is bowling. And I love women's bowling. I like women's bowling significantly more than I like men's bowling, to be honest with you.
Why? I mean, what's the reasoning?
The reason why I like women's bowling is because currently the men are a lot of two-handers and they're like these superpower players and they use their physicality to win. And women, because they're limited, have to use finesse and skill and knowledge of the game in order to win.
And so now I think I had some thoughts too, and I think this will come up again later. When you say women are limited, are they not allowed to use like certain weights of balls or?
No, women are allowed to use all the equipment that the men are allowed to use. They're not limited legally. They're limited physically because they're not as strong as men. Right? So whereas Norm Duke, who is a 55-year-old professional bowler, man, is throwing a 16-pound ball, most women are throwing 14-pound balls. And when you're trying to knock down, 36 pounds worth of pins, having a bowling ball that's 2 pounds heavier makes a hell of a lot of difference. And he also throws it faster,
Yeah.
So because women can't throw the ball as hard and they can't put as many revs on it and they're throwing a lighter ball, they have to be more skilled with their technique. So if you're wanting to watch bowling for technique, women's bowling is where it's at. That's really who you want to watch to learn.
And is this true of all sports, do you think? Like the women have more technique?
We're going to get into it because I think it probably is true for all sports. So we're going to go back into women's sports past, and we're going to talk about the battle of the sexes, Bobby Riggs and Billie Jean King
They made a
back in
movie about that.
1973. They did. They did. And Bobby Riggs is, a sexist this and that, and he did a lot of promotion. And, that Billie Jean King came up and whooped his behind, right? That's the story. Well, Billie Jean King was not the first Battle of the Sexes match that Bobby Riggs had played. Bobby Riggs actually played against a woman named Margaret Court, and she was the number one ranked woman player in the world. Bobby Riggs beat her. Bad. 6-2, 6-1. He beat her. Okay. Later that year, they promoted the Billie Jean King thing. They promoted it. And he lost. Now, you have to remember, Bobby Riggs was an old man at this time.
Yeah.
And Billie Jean King was at the height of her career. And he lost.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing with sports. I mean, I've seen Rocky 1 and Rocky 2. It's basically, similar story.
Eerily
where it's
similar.
Like you come back and maybe you trained harder than the other person. They didn't take you as seriously the second time. Maybe he beat he beat the number one tennis player, and then he thought, oh, no big deal, I can beat another one.
Sure. Additional information. Bobby Riggs was a degenerate gambler. And it was rumored, never proven, that he gambled heavily in her favor after he beat Margaret Court. I think her name's Margaret Court. Let's make sure.
Yeah, well, she's the one they named that the pavement after that they play tennis on, the tennis court.
Yes. No, so what I'm saying is that the whole thing was a setup by Bobby Riggs to pay off his gambling debts. See what I'm saying? He beat the best woman player. Then he pumped up this second Battle of the Sexes match, bet against himself, allegedly, and then lost the match.
But so here's my question then: is how much does this actually have to do with gender or sex, right? Because people have been doing that in baseball for forever.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the players, even they'll throw certain games because they've got whatever odds on whatever thing.
See, and my argument is that Riggs could have beat Billie Jean King if he wanted to, even as a 40-something-year-old retired man. And I have a second tennis match to look at. This one happened in 1998.
For someone who only watches bowling, you sure know a lot about tennis.
I know a lot about tennis. Well, I did some research here. I actually did research on all the major sports so that we could talk about it because I think it's hilarious. But we will end on a positive note.
I've got at least one thing I want to talk about, but I want to hear your second tennis story, and then you tell me. Also, I'm maybe like an inch in to this cigar now, and it's been really consistent, I think, and really good.
It is very consistent, very good, dark. It's kind of peppery.
Yep, peppery.
It's good.
It's I've got a little bit of an uneven burn I'm trying to correct here, just because of the wind where I'm at, but it's no fault of the cigar.
I have a little bit of uneven burn, but it's been steady.
Yeah, that's and that one there has got to be user. It's no fault of the cigar. That's user error.
It is user error. Absolutely. So,
all right. Second tennis story.
Second tennis story happened in 1998 with the Williams sisters, Venus and Serena, in 16 and 17.
Well, and that's actually very topical because we were just talking about Will Smith, who played their father and won his Academy Award for this role.
Yes, it is very topical. We're a topical show.
And we only rarely use topical creams.
Yes, very rarely. But so in 1998, they played a match against a fella named Karsten Brosch, who was ranked 203. You see, the Williams sisters said back in 1998, because they were the top of women's tennis, and they were teenagers, that they could beat any man outside of the 200. So Mr. Brosch pumped it up. They had a big match. He went out and had multiple drinks and played 18 holes of golf. And he's a smoker, so he's smoking cigarettes all day long, drinking all day long, playing golf. Comes in, smokes Serena, drinks beer, smokes some cigarettes between the matches, smokes Venus. I think the first match was 6-1 and the second match was 6-2. And he retired shortly after that.
Okay. Did they try anyone else outside of 200?
That's the thing is that after that, the Williams sisters kind of left male tennis alone. And a controversy happened a couple years ago where they were trying to make the top tennis players ever. And people were pushing for Serena Williams, and people were like, well, she's not as good as any of the male players. And they got all upset. And she said that male tennis and men's tennis and women's tennis are not close enough to the same sport. So she has not directly said it, but indirectly said that the men just hit faster,
Okay.
They hit faster. That's it. And I mean, the Williams sisters had beat me at probably every sport ever, but we're not talking about me, are we?
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I'm sure they'd beat me at pool, like anything.
They'd probably beat me at just about anything.
Well, and do you remember that show? They had this show too. I don't remember what channel it was on. It was, late 90s, early 2000s or something. It was called like Average Joe. And they would bring regular people in, or, more or less regular people. There was some kind of screening process. They had to be somewhat fit. But they weren't professional athletes or anything by any stretch. And they would bring in football players, professionals like from the NFL, and they'd bring in, professional other sports. And they would actually play little games against each other, not like a full football match, but they would do like training camp stuff, catch a pass from Kurt Warner or whoever was big at the time, and that was fairly interesting. But I do think that if you're an athlete of any kind, your body's just trained differently than somebody who is not very athletic or, doesn't do that, isn't trained to listen to their body in that way.
Sure.
So you have better coordination, I feel, more apt to pick things up quicker physically.
Any woman that's a member of a tennis club is going to beat me at tennis. I mean, I'm not even going to go to, like, if you go into town and you go to the tennis club, any woman that's a member of that club is going to beat me.
Any 8-year-old who plays tennis will beat me.
Probably. I know that I was garbage at racquetball in college, and I played every week.
Yeah, I like racquetball. Racquetball's fun.
Indeed. So
okay,
I'm going to talk about other sports because let's go to soccer. Soccer, the women's soccer team, U.S. women's soccer team, probably the best soccer team on the planet. I believe they got silver at the last Olympic Games.
Okay.
But they were getting gold before. They're very good. Exceptional. The problem that I have with them is they sued the U.S. Soccer Federation, saying that there was gender discrimination in their pay scale.
Yep.
And
I think I remember that headline.
Yes. Well, it's a headline too, so nobody pays attention. Nobody deep dives.
Yeah.
So
it's about soccer. I mean,
right? Yeah.
No offense. No offense to any like soccer fans or soccer players.
Yeah, but nobody really cares.
Growing up where we grew up in the Midwest, not a whole lot of soccer clubs.
No,
it's pretty much baseball, football, and then like cross country or track and field. Like you run through the cornfield a long ways.
Yes. So the soccer team sued the organization, and issue number one: there's not as much money in women's soccer as there is in men's.
Yeah.
So if there's not as much money, you're not going to get paid as much. Issue number two: before the pandemic, the women made more money than the men's team, and they were paid more per game that they played than the men's team, even under the deal that they signed, which was different than the men's.
Okay. So where's the disparity, the wage disparity come in then? Is it sponsorships or?
Well, the disparity is that if the men win a game, they win more than the women if they win a game. but the women won more games.
Okay.
The women also have insurance and a guaranteed salary. So if you add in the insurance and the other benefits and the guaranteed salary, plus the winnings that they get per game, they made more than the men did per game played.
Okay.
Because the men only get paid if they win games. See what I'm saying? But the women would have made more if they would have had the men's contract because they won all their games.
Yeah. But
the women were offered
they would have had more
contract.
risk.
They would have had more risk, right? So the women basically wanted the men's contract, and they were offered the men's contract, but they also wanted their guaranteed salary and their benefits.
Yeah, this sounds like a similar thing that happened at my place of employment a few years back, where they, so I work I used to work as a sales administrator, so not selling anything, but supporting the sales guys and girls. And the rest of the office was, they're all office kind of service side. They don't go and try and sell things. They're not on quotas. They don't have bonuses or commission plans or anything like that. But they get upset when, the sales guys get a big bonus or commission, or they hit, like number one in the company, which is a big deal, and get a bonus. And then they get all grouchy about it because they think that because they're, servicing these clients, they didn't bring them in. They didn't do the work to bring them. They're just in retention, basically, which is still a good job, and it's a worthy thing to do. But it's not the same as working under a quota. And that's why I've never been in sales, like professional sales, because I don't want that stress. And some people thrive on it and some people don't. And so you just have to kind of make your call. But, there's no way that I could go into my boss and be like, okay, so the sales guy, he just got like $1 million because he landed this huge client. So why am I not making that? That's not a conversation you have.
Right. Well, it gets worse, by the way, Dave. This whole
I'm
story.
waiting. I just wanted to provide a little counterpoint that it's not necessarily just sports.
No, it's not just sports. It's not.
It's
an issue that we have with the fear of missing out, right? Like
and it's risk versus reward. Like if you want to have a very small base or no base and get paid mostly on commission, then you're going to work a lot harder and you're going to make sure and do that. But if you just want to show up to work and work 8 to 5 and then be done, you're not going to make the big money.
Well, sure. And,
initially,
to bring it back to the women's soccer team, these men all play on clubs, so they don't need the benefits. It's only a side gig for them.
Yeah.
But for these women, this is their main job.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to have a salary and to have the benefits and everything. And I said before the pandemic, because once the pandemic hit, soccer was done.
Yeah.
They played 0 games.
Well, I'm sure they had
0 money.
Just as restrictive
rules, as much restrictions as everybody else.
Well, yeah, as the NFL did, but the NFL has the money to put in the dividers and the testing, and like they've got just a ton of money. It's the most profitable sporting league ever, the NFL.
Sure.
So they've got the money to do it, and they've got all these other the big rich owners that have a vested interest in their team playing. So they buy the masks, they buy the tests, they buy the best of the best to make sure all their players are ready to go, because they lose money if they don't play. I'm sure, and so soccer, it's getting bigger here in the United States, which is cool. But it's not even as big as like Major League Baseball, No. So they just don't have the resources to provide for all the teams and all the players to make sure that they're able to still play games, is what I'm assuming.
I would assume so too. But in any case, no games were played. The women still got their benefits and their base salary.
Yep.
They're playing no games. So they brought this to court. The court threw out the case.
Yep.
Because they had no grounds. Because they did make more money per game.
Yeah.
They signed a different contract. They were offered the men's contract. There's nothing about it that was inherently sexist according to the law.
Yeah, or necessarily underhanded if they were given the opportunity to have the men's contract.
Absolutely.
And then
that
if
would
you
have
would
been a big
say,
risk.
and you would say after the pandemic, they were probably paid more per game because they played 0 games, and they still got their base.
They were paid more per game before the pandemic, let alone after. And their families had insurance, and there's all sorts of additional benefits to that.
Yeah.
So they lost their suit, but U.S. Soccer still arbitrated it out of court and allowed them to get $20 million bonus, but only if the men's team would give them that bonus from their prize pool. Which is hilarious because now they put the men's team, who have not made any money playing U.S. men's soccer for 2 years, on the spot to give the women's team money, who have been making money the whole time.
Well, and I think, and we can talk about modern political correctness and everything like that if we want to get, really into the weeds here. But I think that by phrasing it that way, it really does an injustice to everybody involved, because it's almost like the women are blackmailing the men, because if the men say, no, we're not going to give you part of our pot, then they can be called sexist. They can all be called sexist. They don't want to share anything with women.
Yes.
But I know
yes.
the facts back them up, but that's not how the average citizen is going to see it, because I just saw the headline and saw that the women's soccer team was suing because they didn't get paid enough. And I said, oh, okay. And then I moved on with my life, mostly because I don't really deep dive into a lot of news stories, especially ones about sports, and sports that I don't really watch.
Absolutely.
And so I think the average American or average news, kind of like reader or consumer, isn't going to go down and read and say, well, actually they're making more. So they'll just jump on the, let's call the men's team sexist bandwagon, because it's the easy thing to do.
It is the easy thing to do.
And
a lot of the arguments.
By calling someone else a sexist, then you can't be. That's how it works.
Right. Yeah. You point the finger first, not thinking that there's, 4 back at you. Right.
Yeah. And I think, and we've talked about this too, like you can't have a disagreement with somebody anymore because it's so much finger pointing and name calling. And it just, our society kind of reinforces that mentality.
It is. It's ridiculous. And I've heard the argument, and I've watched some of their interviews. Oh, women's soccer is just as good as men's soccer, and all this stuff. Well,
yeah. Why don't we make it interesting and have the women's team play the men's team for the money?
Well, again, now I did research, right?
Okay, here we go.
So the women's team practices against under 15 boys clubs when they practice. And
so, like, what,
lose.
less than 15 people on the team, or less than 15 years of age?
Less than 15 years of age, and they.
I know.
Lose.
I'm just.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is a common practice for a lot of professional women's teams.
Yeah.
The WNBA actually gets what would it be? Basketball players who never played basketball in college to play against them.
Okay.
Like rec league basketball players in major cities are pretty good.
Yeah.
But they're not good enough to be NCAA players. But those are who the women practice against, so they can kind of beat up on them because they can't play against a Division III NCAA team.
Yeah.
And practice legitimately. And they also ban the men from dunking, by the way, in their practice sessions.
Okay.
Because there's no woman on the NBA or WNBA that routinely dunks the basketball.
Yeah.
On a 10-foot basket, which I'm not a basketball player.
Yeah, I'm 6'6", and I've got maybe like a, I don't know, 2.5 inch vertical maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not very athletic, but I can jump and grab the rim. But like getting the ball over the rim for me, I don't do any workouts. I don't practice dunking. But people look at me like, oh, I bet you can dunk it. It's like, well, you know what, dude, it's actually quite a bit harder than it looks to just walk up and dunk a ball on a 10-foot hoop. You have to get enough clearance for the ball too. Like you have to jump that high. Like, yeah, I'm most of the way there with my arms up, but you still have to jump high enough to get the ball over the edge of the rim.
Right. It's a skill, it's a skill like any other. But the point is that they have these women's leagues because they can't realistically compete against the men. And later on we're going to talk about darts and billiards, where the women are beginning to compete against the men and are doing quite well.
I think this might be a good time for me to share my thoughts, or get your thoughts on something. I think I know where you stand, but it'll be interesting to me. So we watched, my wife likes to watch the CBS Sunday Morning, and they were talking about swimming. They're talking about swimming, and they've got trans athletes now that play on one team or the other, men or women's swim team, and things. And so then I just got to thinking, and, there's people that are upset about that. They're upset like, oh, well, this used to be a man, but now they're tearing it up in women's because they transitioned to a woman, or, the other way. I don't know. I mean, I just kind of like listen in the background because I don't like watching a whole lot of news programs either. Because I find most of them just try to make me angry at one side or the other. And for sports, and even the Oscars. I mean, it's entertainment. It's rich people playing a game or pretending to be somebody they're not, for a movie. But it got me thinking, like, why do we even have men's versus women's? Like, just have like football, okay? And if you're a woman and you want to try out and play football at that level, go play football, go try out, make the team, like do the work to do it.
That's the thing, Nate, is that they can. And they have had women join teams and quit as kickers.
Okay.
They have. I would have to look it up, but I know at least one team, I think more than one, has had female kickers, but they've never made it past training.
Okay.
They can't take the hit. The women don't want to take the hit.
Yeah.
They just don't. I mean, rightfully so. I wouldn't want to get hit.
No, I don't want to take the hit either.
By an NFL linebacker.
By a 350-pound defensive lineman
a massive
or something.
Mountain of a man who's trained his entire life to hurt.
Or you know what?
No,
let's just cut to the chase. I don't want to take a hit from anybody in that physical condition, in that body weight, muscle to mass ratio. I don't care if it's a man, woman, child, or grizzly bear. I don't want to get hit by something like that. And to do it day after day after day, like I don't want to do that, so it's not like a slam on anybody who can't make it or doesn't want to do it. But
no, I sympathize with them because I'm in the same boat.
And my question then is, because I remember when trans athletes first started gaining public recognition, I suppose, or making headlines, people were like, well, I'm just going to go and I'm going to identify as a woman, and I'm going to, get the women's world record 100-yard dash or something. And there's different rules. You can't just go down there and be like, hey, I got my, Coors Light and my jean shorts, and here I am, I'm a woman, I'm ready to run. There's different things. They were talking like for swimming, they have to have been doing their hormone suppressing stuff for like at least a year and everything. But, it just kind of got me thinking like, well, why do we even care if there's men's and women's this and that?
Well, the reason why we care is because women who are competitive want to win.
Yeah.
And, somebody like Rachel McKinnon, who's a cyclist, set a world record as a cyclist at 37. A 37-year-old college professor set a woman's cycling record. And Rachel McKinnon's a trans woman who was a cyclist for a hobby. But there's no 37-year-old woman that's going to come into professional cycling from being a hobbyist to set a world record. It's just not possible.
Well, maybe it's not
possible.
Maybe
Disney
it's
movie, but it's not realistic.
Maybe it's not possible or realistic now. But I remember when they first started, recording these world records, and they thought, man, this world record is going to stand forever. And then the next year it was broken by a sizable amount. I think it was some kind of running at the Olympics, but it was broken by a good chunk of time, at least in Olympic sprinting, where it could be less than a second, but it's still like, wow, they really blew that one out of the water. But and there's something to be said where it's like, well, if nobody knows it can be done, then there's nothing to strive for, nothing to try and like push yourself for. But
that's true.
It's like, so here's my question then. If, according to modern political correctness and everything, that men and women are equal, then there shouldn't be men's sports and women's sports. There should just be sports. And I don't, we've got the Major League Baseball, we've got minor league baseball, and then they've got, the farm teams and everything like that. I don't remember what all the letters are or anything like that with all the baseball teams. But you can't tell me that, like the top women's baseball player couldn't play in the minors.
She certainly could. But, so I have a great example for you, because I know bowling.
All right. Yes.
In 2003, they ended the PWBA tour because it wasn't getting sponsors. So a lot of these professional women bowlers at the top of their game lost their avenue. There was one woman named Wendy McPherson. She went over to Japan and competed in the men's bowling tour there.
Okay.
And she won 9 times there. They have a different style of bowling there, different lane conditions.
Yeah.
And she's one of the greatest bowlers, American women bowlers ever. She's great, right? Her career was definitely damaged by the ending of the PWBA. A couple other women played in the men's tour, and one woman won a major.
Okay.
And she was phenomenal. She destroyed her body bowling on the men's tour, by the way. She's a ball rep now. She isn't really as competitive as a woman bowler anymore. It was just too much bowling for her. And then another woman, she won a regular title. And then there's been 9 women that have won regional titles since then. And they reinitiated the tour in 2015. So in a 12-year period of time, hundreds of women professional bowlers, 2 won national titles, 1 was a major, and 9 won regional titles. Okay?
Yeah.
And that is just not fair to these ladies, because they... that's really not a fair thing to do to them if you want these women to have a sporting chance at winning. And by the way, the 2 women that won was Liz Johnson and Kelly Kulig. Liz Johnson's possibly the best woman bowler that's ever lived.
Okay.
She's incredible. Even with the tour being done for that period of time, those 12 years, she still won like 30 tournaments or 20-some tournaments. She's a phenom on the lanes.
So I guess here's a question then.
It's truly impressive.
Of all the other men that were in those tournaments for that same period of time, and you gave the stats on how many women won how many different titles, but how many of the men that went there that maybe were, like not the top 5 or whatever, not the top 5 bowlers, but they were there and they were, kind of like the long shot, right? Like, I mean, is it kind of the same as like other sports where it's like it's kind of a long shot for this team to beat that team, or for
the
this
vast
person?
Majority of men who have a PBA tour card never win a tournament.
Yeah. So I mean
the
female stats then, I mean, compared with the average, everybody wants to be Super Bowl champs, everybody wants to win the big title, but the fact is that a lot of times football players only ever win because they transferred to the right team, at the right time.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
It's not necessarily solely their skill. Like, it's not one person that brings them to the big game. And bowling is an individual sport. It's like you're bowling against everybody else. But how many bowlers want to win it but haven't? And what's that ratio versus like the women's ratio?
Well, sure.
Like if the ratios are the same in the same sport, then is there a reason to have a men's and a women's?
The comparison is that there's 2 male bowlers that have won over 100 titles between regionals and national titles, majors, and PBA 50 events. These guys are in their 60s now.
Okay.
Their name, I can give you their names, but it's really irrelevant. But there's only 2 guys that have won 100 tournaments between all of the PBA events available to bowl.
Yeah.
And they're the best. And these women have won 1.
Yeah.
And they're the best women bowlers alive.
Yeah.
Right? That's... Granted, those women bowlers are a lot better than almost all the men that are out there.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. But they're competing at the top of the level in the women's category for a reason. You know, they're just not a 6'2" man.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and you watch if you watch even a little bit of the Olympics, they always do the little feature on, you know, this person's local to our state. And then we got some video of them training, or we interviewed them, and here's their training regimen and things like that. And to compete at the Olympic level, that's your life. You know, that is what you do. You train to compete at that level, you know, day in and day out. And that's why most football players don't really play past 30. I mean, they're playing well past 30 now in some of the positions, like quarterback. But you know, quarterbacks get hit, but they don't do a whole lot of running and stuff either. You know.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Trouble in paradise.
Yeah. Okay. So, but I mean, like, that's their entire life.
Absolutely. And I have sympathy for them, for the women that have to compete in an environment that they feel is unfair. It's not really about me and what I think. It's about what they think, you know?
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, and so I guess, like, just to offer a counterpoint or some thoughts, because, you know, women are amazing and they can do a lot of things. And I think that, you know, if right now that they're not able to compete against men in these same sports, I think that very soon they will be able to.
Nate, they can.
You know, I mean, women
are not banned from bowling against the men.
No. I mean,
aren't banned against playing in the NBA. Women are not banned from playing in the PGA. There's never been a woman that's won a PGA title, and they are not banned. They can play. That's
not what I'm saying. I'm saying that, okay, let's just look at it this way then. If you look at early football, you know, like the first couple Super Bowls, and they're wearing, you know, like leather helmets. They don't have face guards. And you just let's say you put them and you make one of the modern football players today. You take one and you say, look, you're going to play by the 40 rules for football or whatever it might be. Those are the rules we're using. That's the equipment we're using. There's just no way one of those old football players, I mean, even if they were in their prime, you could, let's say we have time travel, whatever. You get one of those players in their prime and one of the players today in their prime, and there's going to be no contest. There's going to be no contest. There is no way. I mean, we as a human race have been getting bigger and stronger and faster, and have been pushing our bodies more, training harder. You know, it started out as like a fun thing to do, you know, and now it's people's livelihoods, and so they train and people grow bigger, you know, sport families. They have like sport family legacies, you know, going on now, and I just think that, you know, and you can look at the pioneers, and the early settlers and things, like they were shorter, and we've been getting taller, you know, on average, and there's just no way. I think there's no way to compete. If you go back, you know, 50 years and take one of those athletes in their prime, regardless, and use their same rules. I mean, the rules of the game have changed since then, but use their rules, give them the advantage. They're still not going to win, and it probably won't even be close.
Potentially, you know, it depends on.
I mean, it depends on the sport and things, but I think that, you know,
baseball players are hitting the ball longer.
Yeah, and they're even using balls that are designed to not fly as far. Like they designed the balls to not fly as far, to make it more competitive. And I think that, you know, with the amount of women that are athletes and are trying to, you know, break into some of these sports, I think that eventually it will be the same, and there'll be no gender and sex won't even be talked about. It'll just be, here's these athletes. But I think that because of what would you say, the makeup, like men have had a head start in sports.
Sure.
For whatever reasons, throughout history, but men have had a jump start, and so that want to be athletes, then they focus on doing that and building it up, and so it's been decades and generations of families wanting this for their children, and each successive generation then gets stronger and faster and whatnot.
Well, that's true. And women's sports is at now at a level where men's sports was at 60, 70 years ago in some cases, where baseball players in the 70s that was not necessarily their full-time job. If you were not a major star as a professional baseball player, you had another job.
Yeah,
you had to.
Yeah, and now they can devote their entire life
in the 80s was the same way.
Yeah. And they've got they all have trainers and team trainers and workout regimens and proteins and other things that they take and do. So
not steroids.
Not steroids. Incidentally, steroids, are they a sponsor of a? No, they're not.
They're not.
But
I'm just
saying
when they. I know it happened at least in Minnesota, where allegedly some of the football players were getting steroids because they were not tested for steroids.
Yeah.
At that time, and allegedly some of the coaches were allegedly offering some of their better players steroids.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
So I'll finish my thought, and then we can talk about the darts and things. But I'm probably about halfway through this cigar, and it has been, I think, the most consistent cigar we've smoked.
It has been
I don't know about
wonderful.
ever. I don't know about ever, but certainly on the show.
Certainly on the show, yes.
There's a couple others that have been very consistent, and I think we'll smoke those on the show at some point too. But this one is very nice. I really like this one.
It's consistent, spicy, not too sweet. I've been pairing mine with a drink called Cowboy Coffee, which is whiskey and Kahlua.
Nice.
And
I'm gonna have to break out some drinks soon. It's not quite warm enough out here.
I completely understand. So I'm actually about 3/4 of the way through mine.
Okay. So I'll just say this because I just want it to be very clear that I am pro women. I love women, and they're amazing, and they can do crazy things. Not like country music singer crazy things, but so most of the strongest people I know are women. Whether that's physically or emotionally or fortitude, things like that. I've got a almost 2-year-old daughter, and I want her to be able to do whatever she wants to do. And I'm curious, just because that was going to be my question, is should we have men and women's? Is that fair? Is that actually holding women back because they're not being forced to compete at a higher level? And if you're telling me that soccer teams and basketball teams are competing against like younger kids or teenagers and things, like that's not really doing anyone any favors. I mean, really, if you're talking about wanting to compete at a certain level. And I think it's true in anything, these are just my thoughts, but anything, if you want to be successful at something, there's not really any shortcuts,
No, you can't take a shortcut. And I'm not saying that women can't be as good as men at basketball. I'm sure you remember John Stockton in the NBA. He was 6 inches shorter than everybody else, and he was, on the dream team. He was a great player. There's no reason why women couldn't compete, but they're certainly not competing at the same level now.
Or maybe by and large, the majority of them.
I'm talking about the elite players. I'm not talking about middle of the road players. I am I bowled a tournament this weekend, as you know. I got 8th overall. It was fine. I didn't win. I did better than most of the people there. I get beat by women all the time, right? I'm not a professional bowler. I'm just a house bowler that goes and bowls in house tournaments on the weekends.
Yeah.
But I'm not, Walter Ray Williams, who is like the greatest bowler of all time. He's won 112 tournaments total.
Yeah.
At a professional level, right? Like there's not a lot of women on this planet, even at 62 years old, that can beat him. If they, you know what I mean? Not if you bowl 12 games, right? One game, sure.
Yeah.
But in a set, that'd be hard. He's good. He's very good. And he's not physically bringing it back. Physically, his game is not perfect by any means. It's ugly to watch, actually. He does a few things very good, and he's 6.5 feet tall, and he does not miss the mark.
Yeah.
And it looks ugly. There's almost every professional woman bowler stylistically does it better than he does.
Okay.
I mean, technically, they're better.
Yeah.
Their technical skills are better.
Is the difference then just the physicality?
In bowling, it is. No doubt about it.
So let's take like, I don't know, let's take basketball where it's, it's a physical sport, but it's not like football, right? You're not getting pummeled. And I suppose soccer, and we've talked a little bit about the soccer thing, but if you took some of the best WNBA players and replaced the bottom rung of NBA players on a team, so it was a mix, like it was a co-ed team, would anyone notice any difference? I mean, outside of, looking with their eyes and seeing, but
it's hard to say. You'd have to try it out.
I mean, I think that would be an interesting.
I would say yes.
Interesting study.
I would say yes. At this point in time, yes. If you took girls at 9 years old and gave them the sort of intense training that 9-year-old boys get to become NBA players, probably not.
Okay, so I mean, not. And I guess like that's kind of the thing is. One of the better videos that I ever watched from HR was they brought in people and they were talking about the differences in how people raise boys and girls, and boys are just taught that playing a sport, you can be angry and competitive, but once you're off the field, like you can be friends again, like you're friends, and that's kind of like what boys are raised. And this was, maybe 10 years ago now that I watched this video, and I don't know how long this video was or how old this video was. And then they talked about, little girls usually play T, and their whole like gamification of their stuff is to get along with everybody all the time. And they're not really taught, not getting along,
Sure.
But this is only for sports because, like, very clearly, with the Will Smith, Chris Rock thing, just because boys were raised as boys doesn't mean that they're somehow diplomatic, or somehow able to be friends, quote unquote, off the field. Like, it doesn't make them better people. It was just more of how they were raised initially, and as a parent. How do you raise your boys and girls differently? Do you treat them the same? Is there something inherently wrong with treating them the same? Is there something, right about not? I don't know. I'm not a psychologist or a early childhood development expert. But it's interesting that you brought up, like, if you trained your girls the same as you would train your boys to be a sporting superstar, would there be any difference? I don't know.
There's a lot of women bowlers that are coming up now that have been trained very heavily, and they are very good. Very good. I think that in the next 20 years, there'll be female bowlers that can compete with the men on the PBA tour regularly. Their bowling styles have changed. The way that they're rolling the ball is more aggressive, Yeah. Because traditionally women and men don't even bowl the same. They're not taught to bowl the same.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Oh, yes. So one of my favorite woman bowler of all time is named Michelle Feldman, and she was the PBA Player of the Year, PWPA Player of the Year in 2002, the year before it closed down.
Okay.
And she threw the ball like a man. First woman that I had ever saw that threw the ball like a man.
Yeah.
She was phenomenal. And her career was ended. She quit. I think she went into the bowling industry. She didn't want to play against the men.
Yeah.
And that's her choice, rightfully so. But she was incredible. But now there's a whole group of women that throw the ball like a man, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And that's not a sexist thing. It's a sexist thing because women were taught for a long time to roll the ball differently.
Well, because they were taught differently.
They were taught differently. Yeah, it's not. They were taught to do it differently. Because young girls aren't as strong as young boys, and they can't, cup their wrist and do all these things. And now two-handed bowling has come into play, and no reason why I've seen a lot of videos of young girls throwing two-handed who are very good.
Okay.
Very good. So, hopefully that trend will continue.
Yeah.
I think that Michelle Feldman could have beat any man on tour in 2002. She was good. Very good.
Well, I just had another thought pop into my head is, like in the 1950s, which is longer ago now than it was, 20 years ago. But women were primarily the stay-at-home spouse. They'd stay home. They weren't expected to have jobs. They didn't want jobs, or maybe they did, but society wouldn't allow them to. And they were the child rearers, and the men were out. And so. And that was, before my time, for sure. But kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, that, men have had kind of a jump start in a lot of fields.
Oh, for sure.
And, that's not right, but I can't change that. You can't change that.
Even in my field, men have a significant advantage. Because when you're an apprentice, you're their slave. You do what they tell you to do.
Yeah.
And your family does not matter. You do what you're told. So if they tell you to go 500 miles that direction and you're going to stay there and you're going to work 7 days a week, you cannot say no. Otherwise, you're out.
Yeah.
And they'll find somebody who will. And if you're a 22-year-old woman that has a child, probably not an option for you to do that.
Yeah, but it also wouldn't situation. It also wouldn't be an option for a 22-year-old man who had a child and was a single father.
How many single fathers have their kids?
Well, that's a whole other thing.
Argument. But you're much more likely as a single father to be able to do that because of that specifically.
Yeah,
it's a disadvantage in many ways, but in that case, it's an advantage.
Yeah, and I'm not saying. I don't know. I guess as a father, the parental roles are a little different too. This hasn't happened to me, but a lot of the parenting books that I've read, a really good one it's written for dads. And he's like, "Yep, I bring my child to the park, during the day, and it's all women, mothers with their kids, and they come over. Oh, are you babysitting today?" And he's like, No, I'm parenting today. This is my child. I am parenting today, just like you are here, but, so it goes both ways, it goes both ways. I think, the soccer team demanding higher pay. And there's certain roles, that men can take that are also kind of that similar societal viewed upon.
Sure. Well, I've read up the soccer team because of the hypocrisy.
Well, yes, the hypocrisy.
They are a better team in the women's world, and they are getting paid more.
Yeah.
But they want even more. And I understand that you want even more, but don't use your gender as a cudgel to get more.
Do it on
you
merit.
Get more because you deserve more because you're a better team. I understand that. But you are the better team in context, and you also are getting paid more.
Yeah. So you had
you
had a dart story.
Oh, absolutely.
And you had one other sport too, maybe?
Oh, we can skip it. We can skip it. We'll just go to darts.
Okay.
We'll go to darts. I was going to talk about billiards because there's a lot of controversy in billiards. Because women billiards players are getting better and better and better, and there is a gender gap in skill with billiards.
Okay.
And the theory is that a lot of it has to do with what we're talking about, where there's a lot of men who play billiards. There's a smaller pool of women, but that pool is getting bigger, and the women are getting better. And I mean, the best women are getting way better. And eventually, there will just be billiards because there's no reason for there not to be just billiards. And if 50 years ago, if women were playing billiards at the same rate as men, right now we would have just billiards.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the timeline for every sport will be different, but I think ultimately, eventually, it will get there.
Absolutely. Well, maybe not every sport. It depends on a lot of things,
There's more.
Will we ever have women linebackers? I don't know.
Maybe
if there's a 6'6" woman who's 350 pounds who's got no fat. Then
we. You know what? I played like 2 years of football in middle school, and I went to a football camp, and there was a female center, and she was a force to be reckoned with on the field. I remember that. So,
one of my apprentices that I had was a woman, and she was a running back. In high school football, and she was she's a good apprentice. I don't know if she was as a running back. She said she was pretty good.
Yeah.
Mother of 4, also pretty interesting woman. Definitely tough as a nail. I wouldn't want to get into an altercation with her for sure.
Yeah.
But in any case, so darts not so big in the United States.
Yeah, unless you're drunk at a bar that has a dartboard. But other than that, no.
Yeah, I have a dartboard in my house. Helped me out a lot during COVID, I can assure you.
Yeah.
My brother is a big dart player. He is very good. He was very, very good before he had other obligations.
Yeah.
But so male darts in Britain is huge.
Okay.
We're talking 14 million pounds in prize money. Big.
Okay.
Big. And women's darts is not. They're playing for a couple $1,000s, and the men are playing for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Pounds, but we're going to say dollars because we're Americans.
Yeah.
So, as of 2020.
And how many feet away from the dartboard do these British blokes stand?
I'm going to say 9.6 feet. 8.6 feet. Anyway. So as of 2020, there was a woman that won a major title a couple years ago, and that was huge. But there's actually one woman who is a full-time touring dart pro.
Okay.
Because there's no ban on women playing. It's just that the pressure kept the women from trying to enter and become you have to have a sanctioned professional dart card to play in these tournaments.
Okay.
And now they have a woman who's playing, and she's doing great. She's making more money on the men's tour than she ever did on the women's tour.
Nice.
And her quote is, "I don't want special treatment as the first woman on the men's darts tour," which is a kind of a lot of these women trailblazers that I've been doing research on. They all have that same attitude. Like, they're just out there to compete and to win. And she's very good. And she's winning, like you say, she's winning more money on the men's tour than she did on the women's tour. And they will probably in the future be just a mixed league of the best dart players, no matter what,
Yeah.
And that's good. That's a good thing. It's probably going to increase the profile of that particular sport, I would say.
Yeah, you got to think like more people would watch for sure.
Absolutely. I know that as far as the trans athletes things, I don't necessarily think it's fair at this moment in time, but I watch when there's a transgendered athlete play because I want to see what happens.
Yeah.
It's kind of like watching a car crash or something in a way, which is kind of a negative way to look at it, but It's true.
Well, it's interesting in a way because they're crossing barriers that otherwise wouldn't be crossed at this moment in time.
Right.
Perhaps.
Right.
I think it's good. I think the more, and this is true of most things, I think, is the more diversity that you have. It's certainly in my life, the more people I talk to that have different views or backgrounds or, ways of doing things, eventually, and by and large, more diversity is a good thing. And even in sports, there used to be, I mean, it wasn't it was like, segregated. Sports were segregated for a long time. And I think that sports have gotten better since desegregating them.
Certainly. As a side note, I've smoked the cigar to the point where the wrapper has fallen off.
Okay.
And I have approximately half of an inch. And I can officially tell everybody that from light to finish, the cigar had almost no change. But it was
mine is very
good.
consistent. I still have maybe 3 inches left.
Wow. Why am I smoking so much faster than you? I suppose I got it lit.
Well, and when you talk about a topic that you're very passionate about, you're almost like a chain smoker.
I am a chain smoker. I was actually going to light up another cigar to help you finish yours off.
Well, I could, you know what? We can keep smoking. You can light up another one if you want. If we have more to talk about, we can certainly do that. Or this can be a little bit shorter episode.
Oh no, I actually I wanted to bring it up because I don't want people to think that I'm bashing women, even though I did talk up women's bowling a lot. I coach kids, FYI, right? I coach kids occasionally, and they're only boys have ever asked me to help them. Not that I would gladly coach a girl, but it's just the social dynamics of where I live. The girls are probably not going to ask me; they're going to ask one of the good female bowlers to teach them. But when they ask me who to watch on what I want them to do, because I force them to practice it, I don't have a hands-off approach. Like I force them to do what I'm telling them to do with my hands, not forcing them.
Not like the Catholic Church forces.
Yeah, I'm showing them what I want them to do by moving their body, and having them practice it. And then I tell them to go watch certain bowlers on YouTube so they can visualize it to help them. I only ever tell them to look at women bowlers, ever.
When you said they're the experts on the form, on the technical aspects.
On the technical aspects. They can't afford to make a mistake. It's just, they cannot afford to make a mistake.
Yeah.
There's several male bowlers. Mika Koivinemi is one of them. He's an older fella now, but he used to just, when he messed up, he would just grip that ball and loft it and throw it as high and hard as he could at the pins.
Yeah.
That was his makeup shot because he could do it.
Yeah.
That's like a pretty powerful, shot to be your makeup shot. But yeah, when I have them watch people, I have them watch the women because they are so technically skilled, way better than I am, obviously. But that's just the nature of the beast, I suppose. But I did have because I don't want our listener to think that I'm attempting to woman bash, even though it may have sounded like that to a certain extent. I actually went into my little research and I knew about these two women who were war heroes from before, and I just brought up their names, and we can talk a little bit about them because they don't have movies about them, which they should, and that kind of ties into what we talked about last week.
And what are you smoking now?
I grabbed a Cohiba Black, which is a rather narrow gauged, a little bit longer than a Rothschild, just a little little short smoke. I'm guessing that'll take me about as long to smoke this as you're going to smoke. I also think that because I'm cutting them cross-cut, I get a lot of draw.
That could be.
Yeah. I don't know.
I'll have to. We talked about this episode 1, but I'll have to try some more crosscut.
Oh, I like the crosscut. Nice, smooth draw. I used to do a punch cut. I know I told you that before.
Yeah.
And I never quite got it to where I didn't mess the end up.
Yeah. That's the tough thing. Even with the straight cut that I do, the guillotine, is you really have to get that nice clean cut, or else the wrapper starts to kind of undo, and you're kind of like chewing wrapper when you're smoking.
You're right, and I don't like that.
I don't like that either. I've gotten pretty good though at my cut. So,
sure.
But I would like to try more crosscut. So I think maybe for next episode I'll do some crosscut.
Yeah, and I used to do just the one cut, but I noticed that the cigars are smoking unevenly every single time.
Okay.
And the crosscut seems to allow them to burn better.
And was still the because you said it was a better flavor, even with the V cut.
I think so. So.
So with your crosscut, is you're still getting the flavor benefits, but you're getting a more even draw.
Yeah, I think so. It could all be in my head. It probably is.
most things are.
Most things are. Yeah, they're just made up. Oh, Sarah's up here.
Well, I can vouch. I've met Sarah, so Sarah's not just in Mike's head.
No, Sarah's not just in Mike's head.
You ever have those friends or whatever where they have girlfriends but you've never met them, and so you're like, do you though? Do you really have one?
Do you really have one?
Yeah, yes. And then they're like, no, she goes to a different school. Dude, we're 30. There's no school. Like, she's either real or not.
Yep, she's either real or not. There's only two options here.
Yeah, I remember like the early days of online dating and stuff, and it was like, oh, you have a online girlfriend? Yeah, but she lives in a different state. Yeah, okay. Is it a she? Is it a he? Is it like an old man? Like nobody knows.
Nobody knows. My lighter got a little cold, so now it doesn't want to.
I heard. Yeah.
Yes. Anyway,
grab 2 sticks, rub them together.
Yeah, I know. I actually have matches up here, but we'll be okay. We'll continue on.
All right, take it away.
So, just so that we have some positive female stories, and they're not sports stories; they're war stories. To be topical about.
Well, and if like our old governor used to say, there's no sport quite like hunting man.
Yes. I love Jesse. He's so great. I know that he's not everybody's.
Yeah, fun fact about him is he doesn't have time to bleed.
He doesn't have time to bleed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna grab some matches.
I thought you might.
Yep. Technical difficulties. So
when technology fails, go old school.
Oh, every time. Every time.
Which a lot of the newer generation won't know. I mean, technology fails them, and they don't know anything else.
We've been watching a lot of old shows together because I like older shows.
Yeah.
And you see this old technology that Sarah and I recognize,
Yep.
And it's just like, well, our nephews, even recognize it, let alone like your daughter. Is she going to recognize the old CRT monitors and,
well, probably
rotary
not.
phones and.
Yeah, I mean the CRT monitors; those can go away. Those are never good. But she loves our turntable.
Sure, and that's a technology that's coming back.
Yeah,
but anyway, so that we're not negative.
Yes, the war stories.
And we were kind of ending on a high note,
Yeah,
I will pump up the women's bowling for everybody to watch. But
yeah, and I think like we're not saying they can't, or
no,
that
I'm not
they
saying
shouldn't or they won't. You know.
No, absolutely not. So we're going to talk first about the real life Mulan.
Oh yes, let's do that.
World War One. A woman named Milunka Savić. Milunka, Milunka. Hard to say her name. I'm not Serbian. I'm sorry to the Serbian people. I'm not great. But she was born in 1888. And
good year.
Yeah, good year if you're going to fight in a lot of wars.
Yeah.
So she is the real life Mulan. They sent a conscription notice for her brother. Her brother was kind of a puss, so in a bad way, not in a good way.
Yeah,
so she went to war. So she fought in the First Balkan War, the Second Balkan War, and World War One. Believe it or not. And she fought in these wars as a man until she got wounded. Then they found out she was a woman. And then they offered her to be a nurse, and she said no. So they basically said, okay, well, you could continue to fight, because she was one of the better fighters they had in her unit. And she went on to have an incredible career. She captured 23 Bulgarian soldiers single-handedly. She won a whole load of military awards. She's actually the most decorated woman in the history of warfare, as they say. Yes. And she fought in war for, what was it, 6 years, something like that. Incredible, right?
Yep.
Incredible. And there's, everybody can go to her Wikipedia, but badass woman right there. Unreal. And I'm sure there's going to be women coming out of the current conflict over in Ukraine that have a similar story. Hopefully they won't have to hide the fact that they're women, of course.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the thing is there's lots of great people that can do great things. And sometimes those things get lost because people want to focus on the wrong aspects of the story, maybe.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So she's definitely awesome. Also, later in life, she was. This is great because she fought in these wars and she got all these awards. France offered her citizenship and a retirement. No, she went back to Serbia. She had a child. She adopted 3 more abandoned girls, and she raised them in Serbia throughout World War II and everything else. And so the Germans rolled through Serbia, obviously.
Yeah.
And there's conflicting accounts. But the moral of the story is that the Nazis wanted to use her in their propaganda. And she refused, so they put her in a concentration camp. And she survived the concentration camp.
Okay.
And she was given a pension by the USSR after the war. And she kind of ran a little orphanage and kind of devoted her life to serving people less fortunate than herself after being an incredible war hero and an anti-Nazi, a real anti-Nazi.
Yeah. Did you see if she ever wrote any? I'm sure there's like a book, a couple of books maybe on her. Did she ever write anything about her time, her story?
You know what? I do not know. I should have looked that up, I suppose. That would have been a good thing to look up before you Asked it.
Well, we
You
could
know?
look it up after. We can look it up after. I asked because, like, Viktor Frankl, he was in the concentration camps and he wrote a lot of books. I mean, he was psychologist, I believe, beforehand, but he wrote a lot of accounts. Man's Search for Meaning, and a lot of other books. So I was just curious. Somebody with a background like hers, be very interesting to read anything that they wrote.
Oh, absolutely.
Just to get their perspective.
Absolutely. I do not believe that she did, by the way. I just looked it up
Okay.
quick. I don't know why, maybe in the political times of today, having a Serbian war hero who was in the USSR, probably in America is never a good time. But I can't believe that with all this, they want female stories in Hollywood. And I understand that. But why don't they have legitimate badass women then? There's been throughout history a number of badass women.
Yeah.
This is a badass warrior woman, even better, and she's got a heart of gold and all that,
Yeah.
Fought the Nazis, fought multiple wars, just a lifetime of kicking ass, so to speak, more than I'll do in my life.
Yeah, I'm not going to capture any. What was it, Bulgarian?
Yeah,
troops?
Bulgarian troops. yeah. No, I'm not running an orphanage or. Yeah, I'm not doing any of those things that she did. Which is says more about me than it should. But
different time. I mean, born in 1888, so.
Mm-hmm.
You had one more?
I once heard it said that there was a whole group of people that were born on this earth, and they didn't know it at the time, but their purpose in life was to kill Nazis.
Yeah.
I do have one more. This woman is Lyudmila Pavlichenko, and she is a college professor, historian, woman after my own heart. She also happened to be born in 1916.
Okay.
Interesting time to be born in Russia.
Yep.
So when she was in college, World War II broke out, and she volunteered as an infantryman.
Okay.
And they wouldn't let her into the straight infantry, but she in college was a marksman and took several classes. So she became a sniper.
Okay.
She had 309 confirmed deaths, 36 of which were sniper on sniper specialty shooting.
Okay, and that's
that
like the
was
hardest
up until
sniper. The hardest sniper role
Yes.
to do is sniper against sniper.
Yep. Yeah, she's a pro. She could have had more, should have had more, but in 1942 she was injured, and the Soviet government pulled her off the lines, and she actually did a worldwide tour, kind of like a USO tour or like a propaganda tour. And she met the president, first Soviet citizen to meet the president of the United States, and hell of a lady, After the war, she finished her college degree and worked for the government. And, worked as a researcher for the Navy and all that wonderful stuff. She died very young, drank herself to death, allegedly.
Okay.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Which,
well, I mean, 309 kills. I don't know. You gotta cope with that some way.
Oh, yes. The Eastern Front of the First and Second World War had a lot of stories of badass women. A lot of stories. But these are two that stuck out to me because they're above and beyond. I mean,
yeah.
We're talking one of the best snipers ever. It just happens to be a woman, right? Coincidentally, also a college professor, like I'm guessing super smart person.
Yeah. Did she write anything? I mean, as a college professor,
I believe that she did write an autobiography. I believe that she did. I will check that, but I think she did. I know that her husband, her second husband, died in the war, and she had some issues with that.
Okay.
He was also a sniper. And she was a sniper trainer. I've heard they've speculated how many Nazis died directly because of her training as well. She trained a lot of people. Yes, Lady Death: The Memoirs of Stalin's Sniper.
All right, I'm definitely going to check that one out.
Yes. So, quick read, too. It's only 380 pages. So, very good. But yeah, like I say, I don't want to make it all negative. Never a good thing to be negative. But
no, and I don't think it's negative based on sex or gender, just the current realities, I suppose.
Right. And I'm a big fan of accepting reality as it is and trying to improve on it. You can't just deny reality.
Yeah, and you can't deny history, and and we talked about that last episode a little bit too. Is you can't change history just because it doesn't fit with what you want it to say either. You just have to look at it and go from there. If you don't learn from it, then you repeat it, as the quote goes.
Absolutely. How was the smoke?
Good. Yeah, I'm done. But yeah, it was consistent all the way through.
There we go.
Very nice cigar.
Yes.
I think, I don't know, the best one we've smoked on the show so far.
Oh, I would agree. I like those Series R. They're not necessarily light on the pocketbook, but...
No, but it was worth it. Definitely worth it. If you normally don't smoke that cost of a cigar, and you want to smoke something really good, and not take a risk on, because you could drop a lot of money on a cigar and not like it. Just because it's expensive doesn't mean it's worthwhile. And this one isn't expensive in terms of the grand scheme of cigars in the world, but it is a little more than I usually spend on a stick. But
right,
it was.
Yeah,
it was
I
well
wouldn't
worth
want
it.
to I wouldn't want to spend $16 on a stick and go mow the lawn.
Yeah. Yep. Well, highly recommended.
Cohiba's doing swimmingly. We'll have to smoke one on a show. I'm not going to give any notes.
Okay, no notes on the Cohiba.
No notes. No notes.
But we do enjoy the Series R. So if you see one and you want to have a nice sit-down smoke, grab one of those. And we're going to smoke something different next episode.
Absolutely. Have we decided what we're going to get?
We have that Maduro, the unlabeled one.
Yeah, that'd be a nice little contrast,
Let's try that, because I think that was, $5 or $6. So
yeah, $5 or $6, unlabeled, just basically a bin cigar at a cigar shop.
Yeah,
which can go bad or can go wrong. I don't think I've ever had it either.
I know I've never had it, so
I know I have a few because I bought a few. But
yeah, it'll be a good counterpoint to this one, because it's interesting because with lots of things, price isn't a good indicator. It can be, but it's certainly not the end all be all.
Sure, I've had Johnny Walker Blue, which is $200 a bottle.
Yep.
And I've had Johnny Walker Black, which is $50 a bottle. And I don't think either one is better than Whistler, which is $25 a bottle.
Yep. Yeah, that's a really good one.
I like it.
The Whistler, yeah.
So, all right.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll be back.